If you wish me to speak as Seneca, then let me speak not with the language of persuasion, but with the language of truth, the kind that wounds at first, and then heals. Many men and women live as though to be alone is to be incomplete. As though solitude were a disease of the soul, they tremble at the thought of silence, fearing that without constant companionship, their life will lose meaning. Yet what they call emptiness is often the beginning of freedom. Why do we run so frantically toward others? Why do we think happiness waits only in the embrace of another person? It is because we have been taught from birth that fulfillment is a shared thing, that joy requires witnesses, that life without a partner is a wasted life. This is a deception, one of the many illusions passed from generation to generation. The crowd cannot live without the crowd, and so it persuades each new soul that solitude is a punishment. But let me tell you, solitude is not a punishment. It is the highest privilege of a free mind. Nietzsche, centuries after me, thundered the same truth with greater ferocity. He knew that only in aloneness does one begin to become oneself. The herd fears the one who separates, because he reveals a frightening possibility, that one does not need the herd at all. To be single, to remain unbound, is not a sign of weakness, but of a greater strength. It is the courage to live without leaning, the willingness to stand without crutches. Do not misunderstand me. I do not condemn love, nor do I despise companionship. These are natural, and when they come freely, without chains, they can beautify life. But when they are sought out of fear of silence, fear of loneliness, fear of facing oneself, they become prisons. To run into the arms of another, simply to avoid being alone, is to choose slavery in place of freedom. You exchange the iron chains of solitude for the golden chains of affection, but chains they remain. I have lived long enough to see how society binds its citizens with invisible cords. From youth, you are told that to be without a spouse is to be unfinished, that to walk alone is to be pitied. They call you incomplete if you do not rush into bonds, as though your soul were half a thing until joined to another. But ask yourself, does the oak tree need another to grow tall? Does the star need a companion to burn brightly? No, each fulfills its nature by its own power. So too with man, the wise soul contains enough to live fully, even if the whole world should abandon him. Nietzsche spoke of becoming who you are. How can you become yourself if you are always entangled in the expectations of others? How can you hear the voice within if it is drowned by the chatter of those who surround you? To obey the crowd is to live another's life, not your own. To yield always to companionship is to hand over the governance of your spirit. But to endure solitude, to dwell with yourself, is to discover the shape of your own soul. It is a bitter lesson for most, that the love of the crowd is not a gift, but a demand. They do not embrace you for your sake, but for theirs. They ask you to be like them, to think as they do, to desire what they desire. If you choose otherwise, they call you arrogant, or broken, or strange. Yet this accusation is proof of their fear. The solitary man or woman does not confirm their way of living, and so they feel threatened. They cannot imagine someone flourishing without their approval. But the philosopher knows better. The one who has studied his own heart knows that joy does not depend on numbers. If it were true that man is only whole with another, then the sage would be the most merest of all, for he often walks apart. Yet I tell you, he is the most joyful. His joy is not borrowed. It is his own. His freedom is not granted by a spouse or by the multitude. It is grounded in his mastery of himself. So when you hear voices urging you to seek companionship at all costs, pause and examine their motives. Are they urging you toward wisdom? Or are they urging you to conform? Are they showing you the path to strength? Or are they trying to soothe their own discomfort with solitude? Do not mistake their chains for your destiny. Consider the example of time. Nothing is more valuable, nothing more quickly lost. Yet when bound to shallow ties, we squander our time on distractions and petty obligations. We busy ourselves with the needs and moods of others, losing hours and years in the service of appearances. Solitude, on the other hand, returns time to its rightful owner. It gives you back your life. You can read, you can think, you can breathe as you please. You are not forced to spend your days performing roles in the endless play of society. I will not pretend that this path is easy. To choose to remain single, to resist the endless pressure of custom, is a hard thing. The crowd rewards conformity and punishes difference. But remember, every man who ever rose above the ordinary bore the marks of solitude. Greatness does not flourish in the market stalls or in the constant noise of company. It is born in silence, in withdrawal, in the strength of a mind that has learned to dwell with itself. Therefore, do not fear being alone. Fear instead the life that is never examined, the soul that is never tested, the time that is never your own. To remain unbound is to keep your freedom intact, to hold your life firmly in your own hands. Others will say you are incomplete. I tell you, you are whole. Others will say you are lonely. I tell you, you are free. Others will say you are wasting your life. I tell you, you are guarding it like treasure. And when you do choose to walk beside another, it will not be from fear, but from fullness. You will not seek in them what you lack, but you will share with them what you already possess. Then companionship is not slavery but gift, not necessity but joy. But you must first learn to walk alone, to master solitude, before love can ever be free. That, my friend, is why staying single may be the best thing you will ever do. It is the fire in which you forge yourself, the crucible where strength is born. It is the proof that you can stand without leaning, that you can live without borrowing, that you can be whole without halves. Do not run from it. Embrace it, and you will find not emptiness, but abundance. If you have endured the weight of my words thus far, let us walk further into this path together. You now understand that society's expectations weigh upon the soul like iron shackles, urging men and women to measure their worth by the arms that encircle them. Yet beyond the noise of these expectations lies a greater trial, one that both frees and refines the individual, the trial of solitude. Do not picture solitude as an empty room, where only silence greets you. No, solitude is a furnace, a fire that either consumes the unprepared, or tempers the strong into steel. Most people, when they first face solitude, rush to escape it. They call it loneliness, as if the absence of constant company were a wound to the spirit. But I say that solitude is the great teacher, and that those who dare to remain in its presence will learn truths that the crowd cannot even imagine. Think of the smith who works with iron. The raw metal is brittle, dull, and of little use. It must be placed in the furnace, struck with hammer, cooled in water, and once more thrust to the flame. The process is harsh, but without it the iron never becomes a sword. So it is with the soul. When you remain single, when you walk apart, you place yourself in the furnace. At first it feels unbearable. You face yourself in full clarity, stripped of distraction, with all your weaknesses exposed. Yet if you endure, the fire does not destroy you. It purifies you. It burns away the dross, the false hopes, the borrowed beliefs, the vanity of living only for the opinions of others. Out of this trial comes the sharpened self, a soul that has discovered its own strength. Nietzsche understood this well. He wrote that the higher man must walk alone, not because companionship is evil, but because greatness requires space to grow. The crowd has its comfort, but comfort is the nanny of growth. To remain unbound is to give yourself over to the hard discipline of solitude. It is in the silence that your mind stretches itself, free from the interruptions of shallow conversation, free from the constant need to adjust yourself to the moods and expectations of another. What appears as emptiness to the weak becomes fertile soil for the strong. The crowd thinks solitude is deprivation, but it is abundance. It is time to read deeply instead of skimming, to think with your own mind instead of repeating another's words, to listen to the still voice of this instead of the loud demands of the world. Seneca himself often withdrew from the busy life of Rome, not to despise men, but to save his soul from being dissolved in their noise. He wrote that it is in solitude where philosophy takes root, where wisdom begins to grow. If the sage treasures solitude, should you not also? But let me be clear, solitude is not simply being without others. One can be single and still enslaved, filling the hours with endless distractions, drowning in the voices of entertainment, gossip, and empty pleasures. That is not solitude, it is flight. True solitude is when you dwell with yourself, when you dare to face the questions you would rather avoid, when you learn to be content without the constant feeding of your senses. The man or woman who achieves this does not just survive solitude. They transform through it. Now let us consider another falsehood that has long plagued human hearts. The belief that another person will complete us. How often have you heard it said, "I am not whole until I find my other half"? This lie has entered poetry, song, and story until it is accepted as truth. Yet I tell you, to believe that you are incomplete without another is to insult the nature that made you. You were not created as half a being. You were born whole, with reason, with dignity, with the capacity for virtue. If you convince yourself that only another can make you complete, you hand over your war. You make your happiness depend on what you cannot control. What folly to bind your peace to the fickle heart of another. A man who thinks he must be completed by another is like a king who abdicates his throne and begs for scrap. Nietzsche saw this as weakness. He called out the tendency to lean on others, to seek in love what should be found in self-overcoming. To him, dependence was a denial of one's own strength. He urged man to become strong enough to love not out of need, but out of fullness. When you say to another, "You complete me," you confess that you are not enough. When you say, "I am whole and I choose to share my wholeness with you," then love is no longer slavery but gift. Seneca, too, would remind us that the wise man is self-sufficient. This does not mean he rejects friendship or despises affection. On the contrary, he welcomes them when they come freely. And he does not cling to them as though life without them would collapse. His happiness is within him, not in the hands of another. He is like a fortress supplied with its own stores. When traders bring goods, he accepts them. But they come no more, he remains secure. What the world calls completion is often just distraction. Many enter into relationships not because they are overflowing with love, but because they fear silence. They cannot stand to be with themselves. So they search for another to fill the void. Yet the void is not filled. It is only covered, like a wound bandaged but never healed. The relationship becomes a mask, and when it slips, the same emptiness returns, sharper than before. To those who tremble at the thought of being alone, I say, you are not afraid of solitude. You are afraid of yourself. You fear the truths that would rise in silence, the doubts, the regrets, the unresolved questions. But it is precisely those truths you must face if you wish to live well. Solitude forces you into this confrontation, and though it is painful, it is also the path to strength. Ask yourself, if you needed another to be whole, how did so many sages live content in their solitude? Were they broken? No, they were complete in themselves, and that is why they could give so richly to others. The one who cannot endure being alone has nothing of value to offer in company. But the one who has mastered solitude brings strength into every relationship, because they do not come as a beggar, but as a giver. So do not chase completion in others. If love comes, welcome it as a gift, but do not make it a necessity. You are already whole. You are already enough. To deny this is to live in chains. To accept it is to walk free. Thus, solitude and the rejection of false completion are not barren paths, but fruitful ones. They train the soul in endurance, clarity, and self-sufficiency. They are not rejections of love, but the only way to love truly, without fear, without need, without chains. The single life chosen with wisdom is not the absence of fullness, but its highest expression. You have walked with me through the fire of solitude, and you have seen how false is the belief that another must complete you. Let us now step further into a harder truth. Strength is not found in what is easy, but in what is difficult. The path of remaining single, of standing alone against the pressure of society and against the hunger of the heart, is not the soft path. It is the steep and rocky one. And yet, as every mountain climber knows, the higher the ascent, the wider the view. Most people think strength is proven by attachment, to endure another's flaws, to compromise, to sacrifice. There is strength in that. Yes, but it is of a different kind. There is also strength in resisting the urge to chain yourself out of fear, in standing tall even when loneliness whispers in your ear at night. To remain single not because you are unwanted, but because you have chosen mastery of yourself. That is a trial that few can endure, for it is easier to cling than to stand alone. Nietzsche spoke often of self-overcoming. He did not believe man should rest content with what he is. He urged man to rise, to push beyond his weaknesses, to transform himself into something greater. This rising does not happen in comfort. It happens when the soul is tested. Solitude is one such test. It denies you the easy comfort of another's constant presence and forces you to look inward. When you choose this path consciously, you sharpen your spirit. You prove to yourself that you are not ruled by need, but by will. Seneca, too, would remind us that endurance is the highest proof of the soul's strength. The wise man does not crumble when deprived of what others call necessities, whether wealth, status, or companionship. He shows his strength not when fortune smiles, but when fortune withdraws. To embrace solitude is to embrace a kind of deprivation, to deny yourself the constant company others consider indispensable. Yet in that denial you gain a treasure, the knowledge that you can live on your own resources, that your happiness is not borrowed. The path of solitude is not chosen by many because it feels unnatural. Our instincts drive us toward union. Our bodies crave the warmth of others. Yet philosophy teaches us that not everything natural is good for us. Gluttony is natural, yet it destroys the body. Anger is natural, yet it ruins the soul. Likewise, dependency may feel natural, but it weakens the spirit. To resist it, to choose instead the harder road of independence, is a proof of strength. And strength is always born of struggle. Consider the athlete who builds his body. He does not grow stronger by lifting feathers, but by straining against heavy weights. In the same way, the soul does not grow resilient by surrendering to every desire, but by resisting them. To stay single when the world tempts you with false promises of completion. To endure solitude when it feels heavy. This is the weight that strengthens the spirit. Each day you endure, you grow more free, more self-sufficient, more whole. Do not be deceived by appearances. Those who rush into relationships out of fear may look strong in public, surrounded by smiles and embraces, but strength is not proven in the presence of the crowd. It is revealed in the silence of the soul. Ask yourself, who is stronger? The one who cannot spend a single evening without distraction, or the one who can face the long night alone and emerge unbroken? The first is a prisoner of need. The second is free. And this freedom is not barren. It is rich with opportunity. For when you master the hard path of solitude, you discover that time, the most precious of all possessions, belongs to you entirely. Those who bind themselves too quickly give away their time like beggars tossing coins. They fill their days with obligations, with compromises, with endless negotiations of desire and will. Their time is no longer their own. They rise and sleep according to another's rhythms. They plan not with their own goals in mind, but with another's approval. But the single life, chosen with wisdom, restores time to its rightful owner. Your hours are yours. You decide what to do with your mornings, what to study in your evenings, what dream to pursue when the world is asleep. You are free to spend your time on what nourishes you, rather than on what merely pleases another. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship. For what is time if not the material of life itself? To squander it is to squander your very existence. Seneca wrote that nothing belongs to us except our time, yet it is the thing we guard the least. Men will lock away their gold, but they let anyone steal their days. They surrender their years to meaningless chatter, to trivial pursuits, to the demands of others who do not care for their soul. But the wise man guards his time as a treasure chest, unlocking it only for what is worthy. To stay single, to live unbound, is to keep that treasure safe. It is to resist the endless thefts that companionship, when entered foolishly, can bring. And what do you gain with this preserved time? You gain the freedom to create, to pursue greatness, to build something that outlasts you. Nietzsche himself found his strength in solitude, writing works that shook the world, works that could not have been born if his days were swallowed by shallow obligations. Solitude gave him space to hear his own thoughts fully, to refine them, to bring them forth with clarity. The same opportunity lies before you, whether you choose to write, to paint, to build, to study, or simply to deepen your understanding of life. Solitude gives you the time and freedom to do it without compromise. Your days are not divided between your own purpose and another's demands. They are whole, entirely yours. And with this freedom comes joy, not the fleeting joy of distraction, but the deep joy of progress, of creation, of self-mastery. So, understand this. The hard path of remaining single is not a barren road. It is the high road of strength. It teaches you endurance, self-mastery, and independence. And the reward of this hard path is freedom. Freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom to create and to live as you truly are. Others may pity you, thinking you have less because you walk alone. But you know better. You have not less, but more. You have yourself, undivided. You have time, unbroken. You have freedom, unchained. And in these, you have the foundation for a life of true greatness. Then let us finish this journey together, and look toward the highest view that solitude offers. For if solitude is a furnace for the self, and if it teaches us strength and grants us freedom, it does not there. Its purpose is not merely to leave us untouched and apart, but to raise us to a higher calling, one that lies beyond the comforts of companionship. Man was not born to be swallowed by the crowd. He was not given reason and spirit so that he might dissolve himself into the wishes of another. He was born to rise above what is common, to discover the greatness that lies dormant within him. Nietzsche named this the path of the Übermensch, the one who transcends the herd and becomes fully himself. And I, Seneca, though I speak in other terms, have always taught the same. The sage is not carried by the Thor's current, but sets his own course, guided by reason and virtue. This higher life cannot be reached if you are bound too tightly. For those who bind themselves in constant companionship often lose their chance at greatness. Their days are spent in compromise, their thoughts in distraction, their energies divided. The higher calling requires an undivided mind, a heart free from the constant pull of another's desires. To walk beyond companionship is not to despise it, but to refuse to let it master you. It is to place truth, virtue, and destiny above the demand for comfort. Nietzsche was right to thunder against the illusion of completion, for he knew that the highest man must learn to dance with life alone. He must be able to say, I choose solitude not because I hate men, but because I wish to become something more than men. Likewise, the Stoic sage is not hostile to love, but he does not build his house upon it. He builds upon the solid ground of reason, upon the mastery of self, upon the harmony of his own spirit. Only then can he step beyond the ordinary. And let me remind you, solitude is not against love. It is above it. To live well single is not to reject affection forever, but to purify yourself so that, should love arrive, it finds me whole. The man who cannot endure solitude will cling to love as a beggar clings to bread, but the one who has mastered solitude will approach love as a king approaches a guest, generous, full, and without fear of loss. If love departs, he remains whole. If it stays, it is an added richness. Think of the wise man as a fountain. He does not wait for rain to fill him. His waters rise from within. When another comes to drink, he gives freely, yet his source remains. This is the true meaning of strength in relationships. Not to take from another what you lack, but to share from your abundance. But you cannot reach this abundance until you have first mastered life in solitude. Now we come to the final truth. Choosing yourself. The world will never cease its noise. It will tell you that to be single is failure, that solitude is shame, that without a partner, you have wasted your years. But these voices do not speak from wisdom. They speak from fear, from envy, from the need to confirm their own choices. The crowd cannot understand the joy of one who walks apart, and so it mocks what it cannot fathom. But you, if you have heard my words and let them settle in your soul, you must learn to choose yourself over the crowd. Choosing yourself is not selfishness. It is the highest act of responsibility. For what is the self, if not the vessel through which life is lived? If you neglect yourself, if you waste your time, you surrender your freedom, you betray the very life that was entrusted to you. By choosing yourself, by living single with wisdom and purpose, you honor the gift of life. You say to the world, I will not waste my days in the service of illusions. I will live as one who is free. Nietzsche would call this amor fati, the love of your fate. Whatever solitude you are given, you do not resist it in bitterness. You embrace it, you love it, you turn it into strength. Seneca would call it harmony with nature. To accept what life grants, to shape it into virtue, to live content with what is within your power. Whether fate gives you solitude for a season or for a lifetime, your task is the same: to master yourself, to rise above fear, to live fully in the time that is yours. So let us return to where we began. Many fear being alone. They rush into arms not meant for them. They chain themselves in the name of completion. They surrender their freedom for the comfort of company. Like the one who dares to stay single, who dares to walk apart, discovers a deeper joy. He becomes strong through the fire of solitude, free through the stewardship of time, and great through the mastery of self. In the end, the question is not whether you are single or bound, but whether you have chosen yourself. If you are single and bitter, you have not chosen yourself. If you are bound and enslaved, you have not chosen yourself. But if you stand free, whether alone or with another, secure in your strength, guarding your time, living with purpose, then you have chosen well. Remember this: the wise life is not measured by company, but by harmony of the soul. Companionship may come or go, but you remain. Love may bloom or wither, but you remain. The crowd may praise or condemn, but you remain. And if you can remain with yourself in peace, then you have everything. So perhaps, after all, staying single is not a tragedy, but the greatest gift life can give, for it compels you to turn inward, to rise higher, to choose yourself without apology. And when you have learned this, when you have made peace with solitude, then you will find not emptiness, but abundance. Not weakness, but strength. Not lack, but freedom. This is why, as strange as it may seem, Staying single may be the best thing you will ever do.